I'm Julia. Welcome back to my booktube channel, NB Library, and this video we're reading about gays in space, i.e. queer sci-fi. For this video, I have 4 books on my TBR that are queer sci-fi. The first of which I'm going to be reading is Mad Sisters of Essie by Tashan Mehta. I have this on audio, so I'm about to pop it into my headphones actually. And this one is a little strange. I actually don't know a lot about it, but it comes very highly recommended by Sia at Every Book a Doorway. I get a lot of recommendations from her. But I know that it's sapphic, and it is about 2 sisters who live inside of a whale, and the whale's a space whale. And that's kind of all I know about it. But the language is supposed to be just gorgeous, and I've flipped through a physical copy just to see if I'd like the writing style, and I think that I will, so I'm excited to get that one started. The other books on my TBR are The Blighted Stars by Megan E. O'Keefe. This is recommended by, I think, Carrie at Carrie Can Read was talking about this. And one of the main characters is a trans man, so looking forward to this. And then the last book, which kind of inspired me to make this video, is The Obake Code by Makana Yamamoto, which comes out on February 10th. So as of time of this recording, it hasn't come out yet. This is the sequel to Hamajang Luck, which is a book that I read, I think, 2024, and really enjoyed. A queer sci-fi heist story. As far as I know, this is another queer sci-fi heist following characters that we met in the first book. The 2 main characters got their ending, and then this is following another person that was on their team in that book. I'm getting that one on Libro and waiting for the book to come out and my Libro credit to re-up for the month, so I'll start that once it's released. I keep wanting to hold up my phone to show you the Libro app, but my phone is recording me. So I'm gonna stop recording and go start listening to that. I'm in a different location. I'm at my mom's cabin on Obake Island, and I've made a mistake. Mad Sisters of Essie, not queer. I don't know where I saw that it was. I think the book reviewer whose blog that I read mainly reviews queer books, and so maybe I assumed that it was sapphic. It doesn't appear to be, so I don't think that I can keep reading it for this video. I'll definitely still keep listening to the audio. If I get to the end of it and it is not sapphic, then I just won't update you because it's not relevant to this video. This book is so weird. If I told you the thing this book most reminds me of is Infinity Train, the Cartoon Network show. So how do I even... This book does follow a pretty linear storyline, but we're dealing with some out there ideas. Also, I think I have finally found a good comp title to Radiance by Catherine Valente that I read this past summer, which is an epistolary, weird Art Deco sci-fi novel. But in Mad Sisters of Essie, there's this mythical whale called the Whale of Babel that swims through space, which is also a sea. And inside the whale is a universe. And inside the whale are these 2 sisters, Lale and Myung, who were born kind of as fully formed adults. And they travel through the whale, and there are all of these different chambers that are all different worlds unto themselves. Some of them can be huge, and some of them can be just kind of forest-sized. But I think they're even called rooms, and if you can find the door, then you can go to the next room, hence the Infinity Train similarity. The story kind of kicks off when Myung, who's the more adventurous sister, decides to leave the whale, and Lale, who's the more cautious one who likes to record things and observe things, is left behind. But then, so it's this world where I think we're in the far future of maybe our universe, unclear, where space is called the Black Sea and astronauts are called sailors, and I think they do literally sail on treasure planet sailing ships, and they can breathe in space. And you just gotta bear with me, okay? You just gotta accept it and move on. There is in this universe a library of memories that everyone has access to, and all you have to do to go there is tap your ear and say a specific word, and then you're in the library of memories. And also in the library of memories at the very center, sort of, is this island that this one family lives on because their ancestor built it, and she said none of you can leave. And they do leave, and at the point that we're in the story in this timeline, the family is down to one person, and I don't exactly know how they kept their like family line going, because Myung travels to this island and they haven't had a visitor in 300 years apparently, but I feel like unless they were fantastically inbred, they had to have been introducing new people to the gene pool, right? Or maybe that's why there's only one of them left. Unclear at this point. But if people do leave the island and go off into the greater Black Sea, into the greater universe, when they die, they have to live there as a ghost. So the entire like family tree of this family are all stuck in the afterlife on this island, following their one remaining descendant around and just like talking about her. And now talking about Myung, this visitor who's come here. And also, Lale, the sister who's still back inside the whale, is dreaming of and able to astral project to. Sorry, this is insane, but this is what the plot is. Astral project to the one remaining descendant who is showing Myung around the island. That's the plot of the book so far. And it's so beautifully written. Like, the descriptions are really beautiful and decadent, like Catherine Valente, and there are some like epistolary parts to it, and we're kind of like seeing things from both Lale and Myung's perspectives, and then also there's like excerpts from research papers and stuff giving us more background about the world, and so that's how we learn more about this library of memories and like how the whale has its own like mythology behind it. And so we're talking about sisterhood, we're talking about like mythology and the roots of fairy tales and how they can be, you know, have some kernel of truth in them, and then finding that truth, and independence and like interdependence between people. But the premise and the plot just absolutely bonkers so far. Probably one of the weirdest books I've ever read, to be quite honest. And I think because it's so strange, it is a little bit of a trouble of me like always wanting to listen to it. But I think also there's so much weird information coming at you like constantly in the book that I just need a little brain break. I haven't listened to it for a few days. I will get back to it and I guess let you know if it is indeed queer. I don't think it's going to be, but it's also not like overtly straight. I don't think there's going to be a male love interest that comes out of nowhere. It seems like it is about sisterhood and longing for sisterhood. So that's Mad Sisters of Essie so far. I'm like, I think 31% of the way through. But I'll get back to you when I've started another book for this video that is not this audiobook. Check out my new clip, it's a sword. Shout out to Beguiled Books in Pioneer Square in Seattle if you want to check out a romance novel bookstore. That's where I got this, and they sell cute merch and romance novels, and the owner, Zach, gives great recommendations. I've been very bad about updating this vlog. It's been several weeks, but I haven't read any of the books for it yet. I had started Mad Sisters of Essie, and I had since finished that. It was not queer. I did end up rating that 4 stars, and I had mentioned that I was going to read the Obake Code by Makana Yamamoto. The book came out earlier in February and I got it on audio, so I started listening to that. I'm at 61%. I got to 51% on my commute yesterday and just kept listening. Sue me, I needed something to listen to. So this is a sort of standalone continuation in the same world as Hamajang Luck. Makana Yamamoto is a Hawaiian author and non-binary, The main character of this, Malia, is about 20, I think. She was in the previous book as their hacker, and she's kind of a child prodigy for reasons that the book talks about that are actually quite sad. But she goes by the sort of code name, the Obake, and presents herself as being older than she is. She wears a mask and has a voice mod, and actually she's just a kid. So this book picks up 3 years after the previous book, and Malia is very bored, so she's been going to a gang-owned fighting ring and hacking people's mods and like modular arms and stuff and throwing the fights because it's something that keeps her interested and engaged. And when she gets caught by the gang leaders, they sort of blackmail her into doing this job for them, which involves taking down the current mayor of the space station that they live on and finding dirt on him. So Malia appoints herself as the both hacker and mastermind of the crew and brings a few people on board, including her friend Tatiana, who was in the last book. And alongside the heist, we're really getting into Malia's past. She is biracial, she's half black, half, I think, Native Hawaiian, or I think her dad might have been a mix of like Hawaiian and East Asian, but she didn't know her parents really, and she's feeling very disconnected from her heritage. She speaks in the kind of, I don't know if it's like necessarily would be considered like the pidgin or the dialect, speaks in a very Hawaiian way, having grown up among the people of this like predominantly Hawaiian neighborhood on this spaceship. And she was raised kind of to be a supercomputer brain gal by an evil man, and ever since she escaped, she's been the Obake, but she didn't grow up around other kids. She's not really sure how to like live in society really, and she's really feeling isolated and struggling. And the code referred to in the title are all of these things that she repeats to herself that she was taught by this evil mentor that are supposed to keep her sharp and keep her safe. But I think that she's starting to like deprogram and unlearn that all of those things are just making her isolated and keeping her away from her friends and potential loved ones and people who want to help her. So I think it has kind of more depth than Hamajangluck did. It's still a fun sci-fi heist, and I just loved Hamajangluck for what it was. They do all the beats of a heist and something goes wrong and they improvise, and I think that some people wanted more from it. I thought it was perfect. This book is kind of repeating the you got a bunch of competent people doing a heist, and I just love that. What can I say? In the midst of trying to do this heist, Malia is kind of wrestling with her own past and mental health. She's kind of trying to get closer to people and maybe falling in love and trying to keep these dangerous gangsters from killing her. So I think it's going to go pretty quick for the rest of the book. It's really only a few hours left on the audio, the rest of the 39% of the book. So that should be fun. I'm really rooting for Malia, and I really hope that she lets herself open up and connect with other people and also get revenge on the guy who ruined her childhood. I've just finished a walk at the park. Try not to film the family in the car next to me. And while I was on my walk, I actually also finished the audiobook for the Obake Code. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of the end of Mission Impossible 5, I think is the one, where the heist, like, happens, and then there's more ending that is, like, a more intimate, like, battle of the minds that happens. But honestly, the heist elements weren't super present in this book. It was more about like Malia's character development and her relationships with the people around her and opening up to the people around her. And I really liked that, but I felt also like at the very end there was this sort of paragraph of like, here's all the things that I learned, and I didn't need that. I understand. I read the book. So I think I'm going to give this, I think 3.5 stars feels right. She was able to unlearn a lot of the things that her abuser essentially had taught her, kind of like in the previous book, does a sort of big self-sacrificing act. Honestly, there were some parts that were like too short, like the heist, but then also the pacing of the end of the book just felt like it kind of kept going. Honestly, I'm trying to think of things to say, and I'm a little tired from my walk, but I don't know that I really have much more to say about it than that. I think there's more room for stories in this world, and it's a cool world, and I like how similar it is to our present day. I mean, it's only like 110 years in the future. So there's corner stores and people still speak Spanish and there's video games, but then they also live on a space station and they have computers in their brains. And like a lot of sci-fi, the author uses that to tell stories that are parallel to our own present day. Next, I probably won't update for a while for me. You, of course, will see it immediately. I'm not sure what book I'm going to read next. It's kind of whatever strikes my fancy, and I'm making this video pretty far out in advance because I ended up moving it back in my schedule. So I might end up reading The Blighted Stars for Transathon at the end of March. We'll see. We'll see what I feel like reading next. It's been a while since I've updated you on this video. My brain was just working in a really weird way in March. So this next book that I'm going to talk about, I have already finished. So sorry that I didn't do a introduction to it or updates partway through the book. I was just kind of powering through. It's nice that my making this video is coinciding with my sci-fi obsession. Project Hail Mary came out and I've already seen it twice and it's only been out for like a week and a half. It just ignited a hyperfixation in me that was really hard to shake. So I wanted to read a lot of sci-fi. You'll see that in my March wrap-up, which I will have already posted by the time this video comes out. But part of that is I read The Blighted Stars by Megan O'Keefe. This is one of my 26 books to read in 2026. As you can see, I own it. I got it at Seattle Independent Bookstore Day last year, so I really wanted to read it. This book is set in the future. It's a little bit ambiguous how far future it is. It has a lot of hallmarks of like far future fiction. There's Naftall, is that what they call it? Not as fast. Nafall travel, not as fast as light. And then some important technologies to the plot that I'll get into later. But basically the Earth is dying. We don't see a lot of it, but it's dying. And there are 5 families that are kind of like the overarching corporations that are running this world, called the Merit families, which is the first initial of all of their last names. And we're following kind of one family in particular, the Mercator family, and the trans son, Tarquin, of that family. So he's one of the POV characters, and then the other POV character is a woman named Naira Sharp. I'll get into her in a little bit. I thought, based on the back of the book, that this was going to be like a two-hander. It's on the back of the book, it's like these 2 characters who are opposed to each other, crash land on this planet, and there's mysterious things going on and they have to work together to survive. All of that is true, but I thought what it was saying was that these 2 characters and these 2 characters alone crash on the planet and have to survive together, enemy mine style. My dad showed me that movie when I was a kid, or at least part of it. He showed me a lot of sci-fi films, and I grew up thinking that all sci-fi was horror, which I've grown out of course. For some reason, that film is a real touchstone for me, and I just really like media where these 2 enemies land on a planet and have to like figure things out together. I think it's a really cool trope. I think I've been on record before, but just to establish this here, I really dislike the trope of revolutionary falling in love with her enemy's kid. It's usually a girl falling in love with like the evil king's son, and that trope is present here. And I thought, well, no, it's fine because it's enemy mine, and also he's trans, so I'll give it a pass. But I think that this book did fall into the pitfalls that I don't like from that trope. And also, this is not an enemy mine book because they crash land on this planet with like 50 other people. I'm gonna put this down because I'm tired of holding it, but just assume that I'm still talking about The Blighted Stars. Now, this book isn't labeled as military sci-fi, but it has some elements of that subgenre, which is not my favorite. I just think that the characters in a military sci-fi are constrained by like rank, hierarchy. They're usually, I feel like you get very similar types of characters in a military sci-fi. Like, they're a soldier. Like, that's the character. And I like characters that have lots of different jobs and skills, not just being a soldier. Naira used to be the like high level, super competent, badass bodyguard for Tarquin's father, Achilles. So Achilles Mercator is the head of the Mercator family, and they're part of the, Merit families ruling the galaxy. And she found out that the scientific process that the Mercators use to, I think, now see, I'm a little unclear on this, and I'll put a pin in that. I think it's the like terraforming process, but basically the Mercators have this like extractive mining process that kills inhabitable worlds. So there have been like 6 habitable worlds, like Earth-like worlds, are called cradles, that humanity has tried to establish on that have died and that have been taken up by this blighting fungus called the Shroud. Naira found out that the Mercators were like, through their mining practice, causing the Shroud. And then Tarquin, who's a geologist, who's part of the Mercator family, testified against her saying, I've looked over the process, it checks out, we're not doing anything wrong here. And he genuinely believes that. Then Naira got locked up, essentially. And so these two, well, Naira hates Tarquin. Tarquin has his doubts about Naira's testimony after like meeting her and having gone through all the evidence that he had to testify against her. And so he is more open to being around her while she hates him. So, apologies if I'm telling this out of order. I want it to be like as easy to follow as possible, which requires me to explain some things out of order. As you'll have seen in my March wrap-up, I just read The Martian Contingency by Mary Robinette Kowal, and in that book, in the afterword, she talks about how, I think it was Jeanette Ng who said that a book, or like a sci-fi book, should be centered around an object or a concept that the book is exploring. So like in the Vorkosigan saga, the technology that like kind of changes everything that's unique to this world is the uterine replicators. In The Dispossessed, it's the Ansible. Also, Ansibles get used in this book, which I thought was very cool. In this book, there are kind of like 2 intertwined technologies that are really central to the book that are being explored. That's pathways and printing. So pathways are... Amazon truck is backing up outside. Pathways are something that are installed in your body that look like colorful veins running through your skin that allow you to have heightened abilities. So that's strength or healing or navigational abilities. I think there were some like mental ones, and that is enabled by this fictional mineral called rokatite, and that is what the Mercators are mining. Bear with me, I didn't quite follow the technology, but this is how I understand it. So another thing that is enabled by rokatite are prints, which is kind of like been able to outrun death a little bit in this future, where if you die, as long as your brain was backed up, your body can be reprinted with your brain map. You can only die so many times, and it's best if you don't die a violent death, because then your print will crack, and then you are truly dead and can't be reprinted. Theoretically, they can reprint you, but you will just be screaming the entire time and will need to be killed. Tarquin's mother, Candon Mercator, cracked, and her husband Achilles is on this kind of endless quest to try and figure out how to reverse that. And multiple characters in the book talk about, since a lot of them are soldiers or mercenaries or bodyguards, talk about like trying to avoid cracking, or Naira, as a bodyguard called an exemplar, is particularly resistant to cracking, which is important in her line of work because she suffered a lot of violent deaths. All the characters on this ship that had come to this world crash land on the planet, and because they don't have communication off planet, they can't tell people that they need to be rescued, and also people back at their space station can't reprint them without knowing if they're dead or not, because if you double print, then you crack. The Rokatite is found on the cradle worlds, the habitable worlds, the Earth-like worlds, and is used in the pathways in the printing. There is a fungus called Canis that is used to mine the Rokatite. And then there is this other fungus called the Shroud that crops up on worlds when they are dying. And the Shroud is edible to some people, but other people are like Shroud resistant and can't eat Shroud. So one of the considerations of the survivors on this planet is that some of them are eating Shroud slurry, which is gross, to preserve their food. I've explained all of it. That is my understanding of the technology, but there are two different important fungus strains, and then the Rokatite and another important mineral that I won't name because it's a bit of a spoiler. So you've got two fungi, two minerals, the pathways, the printing. It all got a little bit confusing for me, if I'm being honest. The first few chapters of this book were very gripping. I think that a point in this book's favor is that it is a very thrilling, gripping read. There are very short chapters. We're going through events pretty quickly. It's fast-paced. And so, at least at first, I was constantly turning the next page to see what was going to happen. Once we get to the planet, I think that it drags. Even though it's fast-paced, it's still dragging. And this relationship starts to develop between Naira and Tarquin, and I didn't really feel their chemistry. I didn't feel invested in their relationship. I think that the way that they started to trust each other and that Tarquin was able to convince Naira that he believed her and that he was, starting to doubt his father, I think that was well done and believable. I think if you're going to have a character like Tarquin who is extremely privileged, you need to have him be like sympathetic to the other main character's cause right away. He wasn't like a bad boy by any means or anything like that. He is a researcher, he's not super involved in the Mercator family politics, but is still benefiting from this system. What's weird is that now people live for a long time in this world because they can just be reprinted if they age, but Tarquin's 35. He didn't read to me as 35. I would have said like mid-20s. Like, I'm not even 35 and he felt like younger than me. And part of that is like, one, his dad calls him boy. I mean, his dad's like almost 200, so that kind of makes sense. But then two, it kept saying that Tarquin was off at university, but it didn't say that he was off teaching or researching. He was just at university, which made me think that he was just like perpetually a student, which didn't go very far towards convincing me that he was believably 35. I think that kind of goes into another point where maybe this is just a casualty of it being kind of like a sci-fi thriller, but neither Naira nor Tarquin really thought about things other than their immediate situation or each other, and we're told that there are other people like around them that in theory they should be thinking about, but they're not. Like, Tarquin thinks in abstract about his university, but he doesn't think about like people that he knows from there or projects that he was working on. And we know that there are extended Mercator family members besides Tarquin's father and sister, but he never brings them up like, cousins or aunts and uncles. And then this one I thought was particularly egregious. So Naira is part of this underground revolutionary group called the Conservators, and for a long time, because only she and 3 other people were named, I thought there were only 4 conservators. But then it's revealed that like, no, there are a lot more of them, but the scope of the organization was like totally opaque to me. I have no idea how big it is, what their reach is, what their like even long-term goals are, or like we know a few things they've done in the past, but it was just kind of murky. And I think that maybe that speaks to this book fails a little bit as being a book about like a revolution against a bad system of these merit families that are basically feudal lords determining the fate of humanity and holding the lives of people in their hands. They can kill people under their command. The people around them refer to them as my liege. And again, there are only 5 of these families, and the heads of the family, there's one each of the heads of the families, and so they are deciding the fates of presumably billions of humans. But I won't spoil who the ultimate enemy of this book is, but it's not the Merit families, it's this other entity. And so I think that the revolution ended up being so much set dressing because we're not actually tackling these bad families. It doesn't ever say this, but I feel like it was sort of implied that humanity has to band together against this other threat. And I wanted them to not that they don't, but go into more what they're going to do against the Merit families and not just this other outside force. Ultimately, I gave this book 2.75 stars. I think it had some good ideas, some tense, thrilling moments, but it was just kind of confusing and I didn't really connect to the characters. It's the first in a trilogy, but I won't be continuing it. I'm also not sure if I had another book by Megan O'Keefe on my TBR called The Two Lives of Fave and Scythe, and I'm not sure now if I'm going to read that one. I might start it and see what I think. It's sapphic. Full disclosure, this video has taken forever to film. I think my last update I filmed about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks. I had one last book that I was going to read and I kept putting it off, and then I read some reviews and read the first chapter or so and I realized that I just wasn't really interested in it, which is I think why I'd been putting it off for so long, which means that this video was delayed. So I've decided to read something else, and I also realized that this video is entitled Gays in Space, so I thought I should read a book with a gay character. I'm reading one that was not on my radar until a little while ago when I started getting into Mary Robinette Kowal and saw a very cool book that she wrote with Sam J. Miller, sort of. This is 2 novellas in one book. I had to buy it because 1, I'm loving Mary Robinette Kowal, and 2, I just love the format of it. I haven't seen something like this since Scholastic Book Fair when I was a kid, probably. The Mary Robinette Kowal novella Apprehension is about an older woman getting caught up in a the man who knew too much kind of thing, I believe. So you'll see that in a monthly wrap-up. I'm not going to read it for this video. The book that I'm going to read for this video is Red Star Hustle by Sam J. Miller. This is about a man who is sleeping with a pop star, and the pop star ends up dead. Both of these novellas are crime fiction in space. I don't really know much about it other than that, and I can't read the back because the back is a different book. So I'm gonna go lay on my balcony in the sun and get started on this. It's a little bit later in the same day and I've finished Red Star Hustle by Sam J. Miller. I was about 10 pages from the end that I realized I should have done a halfway update, but I was sitting out in the sun, I was having a nice time, I didn't want to get up and film a update. This is, I think, gonna be like a 3.25, but I'm not mad at it. I admire the things that it set out to do. I think it just tried to do too much and too little. This is a novel trying to be a novella. I mean, it's 220 pages, but essentially a novella. There are a lot of really interesting things going on here, both world building wise and plot and character wise. This is actually dual POV, so Aaron is the sex worker who gets embroiled in this big conspiracy and is on the run, and then Imadi is the hitwoman, assassin, security person sent to find him, and then they both kind of get embroiled in things. This is 20,000 years in the future where humanity is split between planets and space stations. Kind of typical for this genre. There is a class and ideological difference between people who grew up planet-side and people who grew up in stations. People who grew up planet-side are seen kind of backward and adhering to Planet Zero, aka Earth, traditions, and then the space station people are cool and hip. Aaron grew up planet-side and had to flee at some point in his young adulthood. And then Imadi has mommy issues. Her family runs this security syndicate, and she has a twin sister, and it's kind of the golden child, and I forgot the other term, but there's a term for like, this child is held up as can do no wrong, and then the other child's failings are nitpicked and pointed out. Imadi also used to be a like mech pilot for like televised games, basically like a kind of a mech pilot wrestler. And Aaron is a fan of hers from when she was a mech pilot. Early on in the book, Aaron is taking a walk away from his film star client. And another thing about the world building here and it being so far into the future is that every sci-fi story needs its like one unique technology or idea that it's going to focus on. It doesn't have to be unique, but it's the thing that makes this sci-fi story different. At least I think good sci-fi that's trying to say something about present day does. And in this case, that technology is gates. This has allowed humanity to go into thousands, millions of new systems. Gates are really easy to open, it seems, and they kind of prevent any kind of... Sorry, there's two dogs fighting outside. Stop it, I'm trying to film. I think they're playing. I mean, the big one could just annihilate the little one. The big one keeps running away, so it seems like they're play fighting. I think they're done. The widespread use of these gates and the ease at setting them up has created a kind of like flattening of place. So as easily as like walking down the street to a bar, you can jump like 9 gates and be in a completely different system and then get back just as quickly. Early on in the book, Aaron is out on a walk after spending some time with his film star client and jumps to a bar where he saves this guy from being roofied, and that guy, whose name is Resh, turns out to be the clone of a ruler of a civilization that is being oppressed by this empire, but then the ruler himself is a really awful guy, and most of his people are loyal to Resh. So Resh kind of becomes Aaron's protector. I think that their relationship was kind of a product of the book trying to do too much in too little time, because they meet each other like coincidentally. I would have liked to have the reason that they met have a little bit more meaning to it, because so many things are being like orchestrated behind the scenes in this book, but they just happen upon each other kind of randomly, and it changes the course of the book, so I would have liked that to be a little bit more intentional. Another thing that kept happening was we'd get to something that seemed like the climax of the book, and I'd go, how are there 120 pages left in this? And then things that just kept escalating, and there wasn't a lot of time to breathe. We'd skip ahead a long amount of time in like a paragraph break. And I think that's good and economical to do in a novella, but when you're writing 3 different characters' backstories involved in the villains and conspiracy of what's going on, people getting captured and escaping or being rescued constantly, it just felt like it was trying to do too much. One thing that I think it does well is a big theme is addiction. All 3 characters, Imadi, Aaron, and Resh, who gets 1 POV chapter but is an important character, are struggling with addiction in various forms. And that's something I don't see handled a lot, especially in genre fiction. And it works with the theme and the character arcs of all of these characters having a lot of issues stemming back to childhood, being on the run, hiding things, and their coping mechanisms turning into an addiction. I have not struggled with that personally, but it seemed like it was handled well, and I think served to deepen all of the characters and their relationships with each other. Imadi and this other female character who comes into it about halfway through do seem to be kind of into each other, and there are hints at something happening further down the line. I didn't need that to be a, like, big deal in the book, but I would have liked to see the female sexuality portrayed a little bit more, especially since Imadi was a POV character. But the relationship between Aaron and Resh takes up a lot of the book. Another reason that I'm, like, as I said, not annoyed by this book, even though I'm rating it in the 3s, is that there was just so much fun texture to it. It was very, like, colorful and explosive. I could really see kind of the action movie beats playing out. I mean, they're happening very quickly in rapid succession, but I liked the world building here. I liked the idea that the system is so vast, there are so many trillions of people, that this one, like, important empire and these important people are just one of, like, a million other empires and groups of people living in this vast system. This is a well thought out and, like, well lived in world, and it incorporates something that I always love to see in sci-fi, which is original pop culture. I think that it adds so much to the world where we've made new movies and there are new forms of entertainment. That's pretty much all my thoughts on Red Star Hustle. It's kind of one of those tough books to review where it wasn't a 5 and it wasn't a 1. It's hard to review a book that you feel middle of the road about. I just love doing that. I'm gonna read Apprehension next, and you'll see that in a monthly wrap-up when I talk about this book as a whole. I'm pretty sure it's straight. I guess I'll film an update if it's not, but it seems like it is. And that's gonna be it for me for this video. Thank you for watching. I would say sorry that it took so long to come out, but you're not gonna know that. So sorry to myself for taking so long. I'm glad to finally wrap this up and get this video out. These are not the only queer sci-fi books on my TBR. I'm sure you'll see me read lots more of them in the next few months, especially with me doing an all-queer r/fantasy bingo board. So, until next time, and another installment of Gaze in Space! Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.